This meeting to order, please. Thank you. I'd like to acknowledge that the Northern Rockies Administrative Center is located in the heart of the traditional territories of the Dene, Cree, and Dunnizal peoples of the Prophet River and Fort Nelson First Nations. We further recognize the rights provided by our treaty. Finally, we celebrate the contributions of the enduring legacy and presence of the Métis people in our region. Please be advised that tonight's meeting is available for the public to attend virtually and is being streamed and recorded. There are a couple of additions to tonight's agenda. So I have a letter from Mr. Campbell at Villers Air. We will add that at correspondence 10.3. And from the committee of the whole meeting for council additions is the Andy Bailey Active Mobility Study Implementation Report, and that will go under reports at 9.6. Are there any other council additions to tonight's agenda? Is there any CAO additions or staff additions?
No, Mayor.
Thank you. Adoption of the agenda, please. Moved by Councillor Roper, second by Councillor Andrews. All in favor? Opposed? That carries. There is one set of minutes there, the regional council meeting of January the 9th. Adoption is in order. Moved by Councillor Andrews, second by Councillor Enox. Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing or hearing none, all in favor of adoption? Opposed? That's carried. There is a public comment period, section 5 of the agenda, which allows anybody from the public to have a few minutes opportunity to speak about anything that's on tonight's agenda. Is there anybody in the public or online who would like to speak to something on the agenda tonight? Nobody online? Okay, thank you. Business arising out of the minutes. CAO Barry has a couple of things he'd like to bring up.
Thanks, Mayor. Just quickly, the Grace Manor funding request update. We had minutes of having something on the agenda for tonight, and we're still in the process of collecting some information. So there's been some discussion, a request that went out by Trevor to our Director of Finance to Grace Manor. Received some information. There's some additional information requests went out, so we just didn't have time to pull all that together for tonight's meeting because there was still some dialogue up till last week in terms of clarifying some of that. So the intent is to get that back for the next meeting. Any questions regarding that from council? And then additionally, the procedure bylaw amendment, our intent, we sometimes set ourselves up to fail. Our intent was to get something back for tonight's meeting, but given the amount of some of the changes and whatnot, corporate manager McIver was bouncing around on airlines like some others in council were too, and they're trying to get back to town. And just, I mean, in honestly, when we have a meeting on a Monday, so say for tonight, we typically try to get the reports and everything ready by the end of this week. Friday gives us 4 days basically for committing to something for the next meeting, for example. So it was a little, our hope was a little bit aggressive, I think, to get the procedure bylaw back. So the intent is to hopefully get that back to council for the next meeting for review and the committee of the whole to further those discussions to finalize that bylaw.
Thank you. So I have something to add to that discussion with respect to the procedure bylaw. And only because we're having a strategic planning session this weekend on the 28th. And we had talked about transparency and what the definition of a meeting is, and with respect to being open to the public, or whether it was closed, whether it was live streamed, whether it was recorded. And we never really came to any agreement on workshops, which is what's happening this weekend, is really a workshop. And so we didn't put anything into the draft bylaw with respect to workshops about whether or not they should be open to the public. A workshop is even less formal than even a committee of the whole meeting, where people, may want to really brainstorm ideas that are not necessarily their opinion. It's just, you're just brainstorming to get things onto the table. And sometimes when you're in front of the public, or when you're it's being recorded or live streamed, it stifles some people's willingness or ability to just be really open. And so I just wanted to put it out in front of everybody about what they thought. There's various options. Keep it like it is, live stream the whole thing. The other thing, the workshop is likely to be long, and whether that's conducive to putting up or live streaming, I'm not sure. The other thing we could do is we could have an open meeting and just not live stream it or record it. So if the public wants to come and sit in on the session, they're able to come and listen to us debate, or have a discussion or do the workshop, sorry, about, whether it's strategic planning or maybe an OCP, where it's really just that. We're just brainstorming ideas. So I wanted to put that on the table, see what everybody thinks. I'm fine with it, however we decide to move forward, but we need to decide so staff knows what to do, whether or not they need to put a meeting agenda together for this Saturday's workshop. Thoughts? Councilor Ober.
I don't necessarily see a workshop or a brainstorming session in the same light as, say, a public meeting. So if it, you mentioned about, when the cameras are going, maybe we're not as effective idea-wise. So I think we could possibly have it as, not a streamed meeting like we do in a regular session. It could be more, I guess, I don't want to say closed, but
Yeah.
not as, Yeah.
It would be open to the public. The public comment would be advertised as a meeting. It's still a meeting. Because all of the criteria around the definition of meeting applies. All of council is invited. You're forwarding the business of the community, you may make a decision. So it's a meeting. For me, it's whether or not to live stream it and if people are in the room, they'll understand the context of the brainstorming session that you're doing, why you're doing it a certain way, why you're getting up and putting stickies on, why we're not just all sitting around. And so,
well, if that's the case, I think we do have a previous policy that says all meetings are live streamed. So if it does fit the definition of a meeting, then
yeah,
we'll have to look at that policy.
Yeah, we're in the middle of looking at our new bylaw. So it's a perfect opportunity to talk about it. Is there any other opinion? Councilor Gerwin, please.
Yeah, I see workshops as different, like we're not gonna do any business other than whatever the workshop happens to be, whether it's strategic planning or I don't know, whatever it happens to be. So I think that to live stream and have something recorded and live streamed for 4 hours, I just don't know what the benefit of that is, other than to help staff take notes or to help us. I guess we could go back and review it if we wanted to, but I think I see workshops differently, as long as no decisions are being made, nothing else is being discussed. It's simply a workshop format. Then I don't know that it has to be live streamed. Of course, it's open. People are welcome to attend, would be advertised. People are welcome to attend if they wish. My feeling.
I agree with that sentiment for sure. I'm seeing nods around the head for the most part. The other thing about this workshop is it is a workshop. There is an opportunity that, or the consultant that's helping us with this strategic plan will go away and come back with a report. And that report we'll have an opportunity to debate that the consultant got our ideas right, got our intentions right. So that will definitely be put in front of the public and debated the way we normally would. Okay, well, I think I'm hearing consensus that workshops will be open meetings. We won't live stream or record them. Is that generally what I'm hearing? So a note to the corporate manager that if you could put some words around that for the draft procedures bylaw. And that's the way we'll run this weekend's meeting. Okay. Thank you. The workshop. That brings us to the proclamation of Heritage Week. So if somebody would like to move that February 20 to 26, 2023 be identified as Heritage Week. Moved by Councillor Knox. Was there a seconder? Second by Councillor Dickey. Is there any discussion? So I have a comment. We were not able to get any kind of formal response from, or even an informal response from the Prophet River Nation, which was unfortunate. So that's why you only see the two signatures on the bottom. Although the Fort Nelson First Nation felt it was very important that the Prophet River First Nation be cited in the proclamation. So that's why they're there, but they're not a signatory. Okay, so is there any further discussion on that? Hopefully we'll be able to have a co-signing ceremony at some point with the chief. That's sort of our thought, to try to do that.
Yeah, we'll reach out and see
Yeah,
if we can arrange.
If
that
we
for sure.
can arrange that so that we can do this together. So I will read the proclamation. Well, first I'll ask any further questions, and then I'll ask for a vote. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. I should get the vote before I read the proclamation. So let me read the proclamation for Heritage Week, February 20th to 26th, 2023. Whereas the Northern Rockies Regional Municipality, Fort Nelson First Nation, and Prophet River First Nation celebrate a rich history that connects our citizens through shared values and creating a place of pride and social well-being. And whereas sharing and learning about different histories, places, and cultural heritage offers opportunities to connect and strengthen our communities. And whereas Indigenous culture has always existed and is inextricably woven into the memory, culture, place, and practice. And whereas people from all walks of life and from every community contribute to the rich cultural heritage of our region. And whereas our community celebrates the past and future by embracing, exploring, and enjoying our enduring heritage. And whereas the land on which we live, work, and play is the unceded Treaty 8 territories of Fort Nelson and Prophet River First Nation, and as collective beneficiaries of Treaty 8, the Northern Rockies, Fort Nelson, and Prophet River First Nations wish to celebrate our rich and diverse heritage. Now therefore be it resolved, we do hereby proclaim the week of February 20th to 26th, 2023 as Heritage Week. Thank you. Okay. That brings us to our delegation. 8.1, WildSafe BC 2022 year-end presentation. We have Kim Aglinsky here to give us that. Is Vanessa here as well? Ms. Aglinsky, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me a little bit later than we normally would, but there were some changes in procedures, so we just patiently waited, and when were ready for us, we're here. It's gonna be a little bit quicker for those of you some of you sat through this, 4 times, so it is quite a bit shorter. If you have any questions, just stop me and we'll go from there. So just some of the highlights of 2022. There was a 25% growth in the followers on the local WildSafe BC Facebook page. Of course, that also meant there was a lot more back and forth, so I had to spend a little bit more time on that. We did one bear safety and bear spray demonstration was given to the Fort Nelson Heritage Museum staff. They also signed on to our business pledge. We did 5 bear awareness and safety presentations throughout the community. 6 WildSafe Ranger programs were administered. 5 display booths were set up over the season. And we visited 296 homes through door-to-door education, and 194 warning stickers were placed on garbage bins left on the curb too early, too late, or overflowing. Next is just pictures to prove that I did all the things that I just said I did. And there's some of the numbers just broken down on each event that we attended or where we had the booth displayed. So in case you noticed, I have 2 different numbers, 153 in one spot and 195 in another. So I thought I'd deal with that right off the bat. So there were 153 black bear reports this year on the WARP system. So that's the system that we encourage people to phone and report. The 195 is the reports that the CO got. So he gets reports from other areas as well. So I wanted to clear that up. Just because I don't normally put that 195 in there. I have no explanation as to why I did this year, but it's there nonetheless. So the 136 in 2022, not 2021, is near the average of about 129. Naturally, the calls peaked in September when bears were starting to enter hyperphagia. And we did have an increase in black bear reports, partially due to the family unit that hung around town most of September. They were actually around town most of summer, just were hidden on the site until the fall. And that generated many reports to the RAP line until they were relocated. Further to that, there was an increase in black bears that were lethally destroyed this year, which made space for new black bears to enter the community a little bit easier to gain access to food sources. Pretty picture of our healthy sow and her 3 cubs. So this just breaks down by species, just the calls and what the calls that we received by species. And just something that we observed again this year, and I have to bring it to your attention again, is the increase in the deer that we are seeing in the community, foraging on cedar shrubs, what's left of the cedar shrubs and other vegetation. Their diets also appear to be changing, and they're also eating pine and spruce as well. Several calls were received this year about feeding deer. So people definitely, are definitely calling other people out. And for the most part, I stayed out of that, and I passed it all off to the bylaw enforcement officer and let him handle it, because there is a bylaw that goes with that and asks people not to feed the deer. So bin tagging in 2022, the focus this year was bin set out too early with attractions. If we just put that down a little, because I haven't memorized it, thanks. As well as the overflowing bins. We went out randomly this year, so we didn't go out each and every night. There was garbage pickup, and 194 bins were tagged between May and October. So that's the sticker. We're all familiar with them. That's the sticker I put on there when the bin is out too early, too late. And I actually have one now that's for overflowing. I just have a different message that goes inside. If you don't know what bin tagging is, that tells you right there, and it also tells you in my annual report. I usually include this just to show you we had 24 properties that repeated 1 or more times after the initial sticker, 6 properties that repeated 3 or more times after an initial sticker, and only 11 bins were overflowing. And only after noticing a high number of bins left out overnight after pickup and an increase in bear activity did we even start tagging them. For the most part, we left them alone. But however, the bears started going got a little bit busier in East Sub neighborhoods. So we did start going out, and they had to be out overnight. There was no 10, 11 o'clock. We actually went out the following morning. So there's no argument. They were definitely out overnight. So for the most part, most people, after they have one tag of their garbage, they comply. So it certainly is getting better. Go ahead, Jay. So overall, we're pleased with the low number of garbage bins being set out too early, and most days we didn't tag a single bin on either collection day. So that's on either the upper or lower half of Fort Nelson. And just a reminder that it's about 761 bins that are emptied during garbage pickup every week. So it does indicate that most residents right now are in compliance with your bylaw. So the door-to-door education is a big piece. And of course, especially when the bears we're usually in the areas the bears are, because that's how we sort of decide where we're going to go. We visited 247 properties door to door, which means we left that information at their door. We were able to talk to 50 people face to face. And then there was another 25 properties we visited specifically because we could see a fruit tree or something in their front or their backyard. And it hadn't been picked yet. So we're reminding residents if they could do that and referring them to the Friendship Center because they run the fruit cleaning project here, because that's still in relatively new. It's only in its 2nd year, but it's certainly been a godsend to some of our aging citizens that have fruit trees and are just unable to pick them. This is a map. 2022 is blue. The yellow was 2021 and the red was 2020. These are the homes that we visited. Some of those areas have been visited twice, and I don't reflect that at all. So we're getting there. We still haven't been to every single property. But you know what? We don't have bear issues in, you know, in certain areas either. So there's no, you know, no point in wasting my time there. My time should be better focused on the areas, you know, that we are having, you know, some issues with bears for sure. So the calls to the RAP number are logged, tracked, and monitored. We all know this because I tell you that every year. And when necessary, they're followed up by the CO service. I monitor those calls, and it provides me a really good indication where my door-to-door visits should be, and where I should initiate further education and awareness to specific residential areas. And this process is getting better, but it's still not completely understood in the community. But it is improving. Bottom three are just some pictures of you know what remains after a bear has, you know, got after your garbage can. Garbage again is the most reported attractant here. So to address those concerns in 2023, provided mayor and council you approve the budget, we would love to host a community meeting, bringing all the partners together so the community understands what we're doing. I don't think people have any idea the extent of the work that is going on behind the scenes, as the community partners try and, you know, and get a handle and get a grasp on the bears. So I think a community meeting with all of the partners would certainly help that. You know, we're going to continue to help the NRM work towards their Bear Smart community status. Continue door-to-door campaigns as we have, continue to promote the use of WARP, continue to use our Facebook page as the place where we want people to go, you know, to seek that current, valuable, and true information, along with the NRM's Wildlife Encounters website. You know, we want to spend a little bit more time on the human deer conflict education, and I do want to concentrate a bit more next year on the business pledge program. We did have the museum sign on this year. You can find more information about it on the WildSafe BC page, but basically businesses are committed to, you know, taking the proactive steps necessary to prevent bears from either accessing their property or their commercial garbage bins, and an increase in bear spray demonstrations and bear aware and safety presentations as well, what we're going to try and hope for 2023. Fruit trees are also another source of attractants in the community that are certainly drawing wildlife. We've seen that the last 2 years. They particularly love those reddish purple cherry trees, the ornamental cherry trees. It seems to be one of their favorites, and they're all over town. Obviously, these trees are you know, certainly affecting the safety of the neighborhood, and several areas have been identified as hotspots, and those are the areas that I'm concentrating my time on. And in 2023. We certainly want to help the municipality to implement some of the suggestions the arborist had in his report in 2022. We're hoping that WildSafe BC can come up here and train me so that I can give electric fence demonstrations, because they are a tremendous deterrent. We'll do an increased focus on social media, news articles, workshops, hopefully flyers of the municipal tax notices, and more door-to-door canvassing. And continue to connect residents with the Friendship Center on the fruit bleeding group, because it has been very, very helpful. Success story, one of our newest mobile home parks, you know, has had issues with bears since its development. It had 3 large commercial bins service the property, and those bins backed onto the trees. And he also had problems with non-residents using the bin as a communal dumping spot. So the bins were always full. WildSafe BC worked with that mobile home park owner along with Wide Sky Disposal, and the bin owner switched out his 3 bins for 1 bear bin, 1 bear resistant bin. That was a savings to the owner. And then he actually moved that bin to a more central location in the mobile home park, away from the trees. And there was an immediate and noticeable decrease in the number of bears going into that mobile home park. It was almost immediate. So yeah, just like I said, short and sweet this year. Thank you to our partners, the BC Conservation Foundation, WildSafe BC, the municipality, Conservation Officer Service in the province of BC. Also, I have 1 volunteer. That's my sister. She is out there every single night with me. She's my safety person, so she might as either she comes with me, or I'm going to phone her when I start and phone her when I'm finished. So she comes with me. She is my only volunteer, and then the Kamloops team has been very, very supportive in so many ways, and they make it very easy for me to roll this program out most of the time seamlessly. So thank you, and I would be open to any questions should council have them. For my 10 minutes, did I do 10 minutes? I was told I had 10 minutes.
Yeah, you were great. Thanks, Ms. Clark. Is there anybody who has any questions?
I do.
Counselor Schultz.
I just, I was thinking of, well, first of all, thank you for your personal involvement for quite a few years now. And this is an awesome report. This is really good. I can see some really good progress being made on a lot of areas, management areas. I just had a question around the shared values. It's interesting whenever a conflict or no, whenever a rash of sightings happen in the community all at once, and you have it both in rants and raves, and hardly anyone phones the rap line, and the other issues around that. And it's interesting to see the comments and that, and how that there are quite a few people that actually like to live in a place like this where you can see a bear on your street, and other ones that don't like it when they open the front door and step out and there's the bear asking them to go back inside. And you've got this balance that is is difficult to reach. And just from a wildlife management point of view, I was thinking that an idea we could actually integrate is to use the bear's nature to our advantage. And that would be to figure out where on the outskirts of our area, say on the airport road out a little farther, or out on the Alaska Highway, where should we be planting fruit trees? As I know that the attraction, like I know that that actually works in the world of, in the farm world south of us, where we have grain fields and so on. There are, I know farmers who would plant an oats field, a small one, somewhere nearby where their other fields are, and the bears are so attracted to the oats that they actually leave all the other fields. And I was just thinking that that's an idea. I don't want to suggest we do something about it, but I'd like us to think about that idea. Thanks.
Thank you. Counselor Gerwin, please.
Kim, did you notice any active bear activity, or I guess deer activity around those that are diverting their organics? So we have the little green bins sitting outside. And I mean, there's a little locking device on it, but you know, it would just take a swipe and everything would go flying. So I didn't see any of those containers spilled, but I was wondering if you had noticed anything.
No, and I watched very carefully because I was very concerned.
Mm.
But Ariana did work with the CO service and WildSafe BC before implementing or even choosing for that matter, the containers that she did use. And we watched them carefully because, you know, every week there's more and more buy-in. So every week you see more of these containers being set up, which is great. What we do see is some people aren't composting properly. But as for the containers and Ariana's program, it's working, you know, it's working well. And we didn't see any harm, any, you know, increase in activity from bears because of that program at all.
Please.
So that's great to know as we hopefully increase the diversion, whether that's by having home pickup or by people taking their organics to the landfill. It's good to know that we're not causing more of a problem. I'm not sure why bears would be attracted to a different, like to the garbage, but then not to the organics, because it's like, yeah, it's just in a paper bag. So
Ariana's pretty quick to pick up. So those, and I don't know if that's it's fact or not, but I know she's usually picked up those long before the garbage has been picked up on the street. She is fairly quick. They don't sit out there full for very long. And I've also, I think maybe saw one time where they actually sat out overnight. And I think those people had gone on vacation. So people treat them a little bit differently than they do the garbage bins. I don't have any explanation for that. But that's.
I know Councillor Andrews wants to go, but I just think that we need to be aware, because as we're increasing, hopefully this usage, that we might be creating a problem. And I don't know if you have any suggestions as to how we can mitigate that. And I don't mean to put you on the spot
No.
tonight, but just to think about it.
Like I said, she has worked with the CO service and WildSafe BC, and we have helped her and guided her, and she's, you know, chosen some pretty decent containers. And if and when it becomes, you know, an issue, we will, you know, would certainly have that reflected in the annual report, but right now it's not an issue.
Counselor Andrews.
You mentioned you have hotspot areas And I'm imagine on garbage days, those hotspot areas are even hotter of an area. Has work been done with the contractor to pick up those garbages sooner?
No.
Would that help at all? Maybe something we can do as a council?
So it's certainly an idea. You know, I know I'm just thinking of the hotspot areas and I'm not completely sure of what time Wide Sky picks. I know what time he picks up at my house, but I'm not sure as he gets further on down. On, you know, up on the top side of town, Gardner Crescent is certainly is certainly, it backs right along the, right along the forest. It's certainly one of the hotter spots. So maybe start and do it backwards. You could start on the bottom and work your way up. And again, the same thing on the lower part of town, Tamarack, it backs right onto the bush. It's the same scenario as Gardner. And it's probably, maybe, I'm not sure how they do that, but I think it may be one of the last ones. So I mean, perhaps just reversing the order that they pick up. But that doesn't, I mean, at the end of the day, if you have garbage that smells, the bears figure things out, right? They're just gonna go to a different area and they're gonna find a bin that's full and sadly, they always do, right?
Maybe when we're looking at our contract for pickup, we have them work with our wild safe coordinator, and that might
So
be
it's a
something
very
for
good idea.
future.
Very good idea.
Maybe something just to note in the minutes that maybe it's, I know this would cost money, but maybe during the summer months, it needs to be like twice a week pickup as opposed to weekly pickup.
I see. So for, I work, like I said, I work with Recycle BC and I love recycling. And if people are recycling properly, they should have one tiny little bag of garbage. So, yeah, should have, would have, could have, but the other thing is that we want to be accommodating, but we also want to provide the education to the residents to make sure that they're participating in the program, rather than saying, okay, we can create as much garbage as you want and we'll just accommodate our schedule to suit you. So I think education and awareness and teaching people that, in a household of 4, if you're recycling properly, your garbage should be very minimal. I'm big on education awareness around it.
Thank you. I think that's a good opportunity for me to say what I wanted to say, and that was, I don't think you give yourself enough credit with respect to the education bit. That could be why you're seeing more reports, it's because you're educating the community better. And sometimes you'll see that more reports coming in. I know there was the sow with the 3 cubs that you talked about, but maybe people are just prepared because of your education. I had one question. I quizzed staff this afternoon about it, and that is what happened in 2018? Because reports are way down that year. Is there something that was happening in the community, or I just look at your charts on page 17 and page 18.
2018 was the very first year. So, and I didn't work then. So it might be simply we're reporting things differently. I can't honestly answer that.
Yeah. That was staff's thoughts as well, is that it was.
Yeah. And you know what, everything factors in, whether you're early spring, late spring, wet spring, dry spring. I mean, weather factors in, the availability of food factors in. There's so many variables in how many bears are going to come to town or how many aren't, right? It just, and sometimes it doesn't matter. It just is, right?
Yeah.
But I wasn't here in 2018. I can certainly take that back to Wild Safe BC, and I will have an answer for you, within a
No,
couple of weeks.
I think the fact that the reporting thing, I mean, you've said it, the staff has said it, and that satisfies me, for sure. You look at the chart with respect to black bears, and it is pretty consistent for 6 years, right? It is pretty consistent, so that
What's
one year
not-
just stands out.
I always say that the difference, in all the years I've been doing it, Facebook makes a huge difference. People go onto Facebook and it's all over. Those bears were always here. We just didn't know because we didn't have Facebook to tell us that they were there. So that doesn't change. What's changing is the information that's available to people. I don't mind Facebook. People want to walk in the community. They go on there, they have a look, they know what area a bear is in. They're not going to go there. Nothing wrong with that. In fact, I use it at night when I decide where I'm going to go. I like to be 1 step ahead or 2 steps back. So I mean, I've used it, so there's nothing wrong with using it for that kind of a tool. But I think people think that we're being overrun. with bears in the community, and the statistics just don't show that.
Okay, thank you very much for your
Thank you so
presentation. And I
much.
know we have a report a little later on.
Yeah, I'm
on
gonna
the
sit
agenda.
and wait for
Yeah.
that as well, but I'm just gonna move now.
Thank you.
Okay.
Get yourself a glass of water. Come over here. The next report is from the fire chief on the Northern Rockies Fire Rescue Training playbook and some of the statistics that I was looking for. We've already passed the just forgot the word I wanted to use, but the fire rating, I guess that we'll respond to. We've done that already, but the chief committed to bringing back the training record to us. I'm very grateful that you did that. Thank you very much. It certainly fulfills every concern that I had. So it's, if there's something you'd like to speak to, chief?
I can just speak to the report if you wish, or if there's
I'm-
any questions I can answer for council in regards to the matrix.
Okay, are there any questions from the rest of council? Seeing none, we can receive it for information.
Awesome.
Moved by Councillor Gerwing, second by Councillor Roper. All in
thank you.
favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much, chief. I appreciate that you put that together for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
9.2 is a development permit application number 2201, 4804 50th Avenue North. I'll turn that over to staff.
Rhonda is right here. Behind you. Check the mic. She changed it up and went to different spots.
Good evening, Mayor, and good evening, councillors. We received a development permit application on December 6th of 2022 for the construction of approximately 500 meters square of restaurant and a drive-through business. And I'm going to run council through the highlights of the DP application. The subject property was previously used as the service station until 2008, and for the several years, property has been vacant while undergoing through the remediation. A certificate of compliance specific to this parcel was issued by the Ministry of Environment on December 3rd of 2014. And with an interest in developing the site with a restaurant and a drive-through business, last year's zoning amendment was initiated to change the zoning of the parcel from C6 service station to C2 highway commercial. In the NRRM official community plan, specific areas of the Fort Nelson have been designated as a development permit area. Basically, development within the development permit area is subject to additional objectives and guidelines. While development permit area guidelines provide objective principles to guide council's condition for approving or refusing the DP application, the flexibility of the DPA guidelines allows council to fairly exercise the discretion in granting or refusing a permit on a case-by-case basis. According to Northern Rockies Regional Municipality Official Community Plan, the subject property belongs in downtown development permit area, and per section 12 of the NRRM zoning bylaw, which identifies the development guidelines for parking, landscaping, vehicle access and circulation, signage, pedestrian access, and general characteristics of the building and structures. The proposed development complements key objective and policies identified in the official community plan that includes encouraging business diversity, fostering economic diversification, recognizing the importance of maintaining Alaska Highway Corridor in an aesthetically pleasing manner, and encouraging functional and visual improvements in the downtown and tourist-focused area. Speaking about the proposed development, the subject property is a corner parcel located northwest of the intersection at 50th Avenue North and Airport Drive. The proposed development has a ground coverage of 11% approximately, and rest of the spaces are allocated for parking, loading, and landscaping. The proposed building is one-story structure, and its form and character integrate with the surrounding structures. The access to the property is proposed from 50th Avenue North, and the building is accessible for the pedestrian. And speaking of parking area, altogether there are 39 off-street parking spaces and proposed, including 2 accessible parking spaces and 1 loading space is allocated in the proposal. The drive-through has a dual lane and is proposed to accommodate approximately 20 vehicles on a stack. Similarly, landscaping is provided along the property edge, roadways, and on the east side of the building to buffer the loading area, the parking area, and the drive-through lane. As per the current zoning bylaw, the proposed development complements the C2 highway commercial zone regulations and downtown development permit area provisions of bylaw. And RRM is also working with urban system traffic engineers to complete the safety review of the road network surrounding the proposed development. The safety review, which is intended to recommend the mitigation measures and strategies to improve the safety conditions. Once the development permit is approved, the applicant will be required to submit the paving deposit as required by the zoning bylaw regulation and eventually submit the building permit. According to the information provided by the applicant, the construction is planned to be commencing in early spring of 2023, and the targeted completion date is October of 2023. I would also like to mention that legislative requirements in relation to the referral process has been satisfied. And basically that is all from my end, and I would be happy to answer any question council may have.
Thank you, Ms. Anticaria. Are there any questions from council? It's a great report. Thank you. Councilor Andrews?
I remember over the summer, I think it was, Ms. Christy Lear came in with new accessible parkings that we've adopted at the municipality. Has this information been shared with them for their accessible parking?
Well, the regulation about the accessible parking is in the zoning bylaw, and according to the information proposed here is in compliance with the zoning bylaw regulation.
Thank you.
Councilor Souls?
Yeah, I'd just like to say how delightful this is to see a brownfield turned into something that's not a brownfield. It's actually quite rare. And just the process of how that came to be was there was when Imperial was working in the oil patch here, one of their contractors was run from a local perspective, and Imperial heard about the brownfields in Fort Nelson quite often, and they finally relented. And their 2 properties, as far as I know, are the only ones that have been converted back to a usable state for other purposes. And I thought that is just kudos to them at that time, but it's exciting to see that.
Are there any other questions? Councilor Dickey?
This is probably a question for staff, and I don't know what the process is of getting a business license in Fort Nelson, but is there some sort of engagement that's done with existing businesses, or are we just approve permits, land permits?
So the permit process basis, the application goes through, there's requirements to be met as part of that, depending on what the applicant or what the end result or end business is going to be. But no requirement specific like this one to look at other communication with other businesses.
Yeah, if there was a change to the zoning or something like that, there'd be a requirement to talk to the businesses around. But if it meets the zoning, if it's part of the OCP, if it meets all the parking bylaws, et cetera, then it comes to us as a development permit, and then.
That's correct. Yeah. So if it meets everything, if there's requirements to change something, like if there was a request to be a zoning amendment, or we call it tonight spot zoning, then there's legislation and requirements for notification in a certain radius and whatnot. And in this case, if it meets all the checks and balances and the zoning's appropriate, then the DP goes to council for review.
So staff has made a recommendation. What's council's wishes? Counselor.
I would go with the recommendation that the development permit application DP 2201 be approved for a 501.21 square meter restaurant and dual drive-through business located at 4804 50th Avenue North, legally described as Lot B, District Lot 1577, Peace River District Plan, PGP 12826.
Moved by Counselor Dickey, second by Counselor Souls. Is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the report. 9.3 is the next order of business, the Wild Safe BC Community Coordinator Grant Program. Sean, please. You're bouncing all over tonight.
Good evening again, Mayor and Council. The report before you, we're recommending that an application for the 2023 Wild Safe BC Community Coordinator Program be submitted, and a budget of $6,000 be pre-approved in principle, subject to approval of the grant funds. As you all saw, the work that Ms. Glinski has been doing as the Wild Safe Coordinator for the past number of years has been reflected within her report as well. So we can see the history was here from 2018. And as an administration report 0321 describes, we've annually committed the funds ranging from 4,000 to 6,000 towards the program. And it has been a success over several years as of we being assigned a coordinator. So today for the option, we're recommending that the application to the 2023 Wild Safe BC Community Coordinator Program be submitted, and a budget of 6,000 be pre-approved in principle, subject to the approval of grant funds.
There's a recommendation of staff. What are council's wishes? Okay, yeah, turn on your mic, please. Can you turn on your mic, please? Thank you.
Sorry, I would say recommend that we go ahead with that. Kim works exceptionally hard and spends many hours out there, and what she's doing is helping.
Moved by Councillor Enoch, second by
second that.
Councillor Roper. Councillor Enoch, is there anything else you wanted to say about? I didn't want to interrupt you. You're on such a roll. Is there any further questions? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That's carried.
Thank you.
9.4 Administration Report 0523, the Share Shed Trial Project.
Hi, Mayor and Council. So this report comes to you, it's providing a summary of the Share Shed Trial Project. As Council remembers, last year, the Share Shed was officially opened in July in efforts to provide another opportunity for repurposing used goods and to reduce waste. And while the project was initiated by Council, it was also a recommendation in the NRM Solid Waste Management Plan. Establishment of the Share Shed for a 6-month trial project was $15,453, including materials, labor, and increased operating costs. And it is anticipated operational costs will be $15,000 annually. So while awareness about the project is still developing, feedback received so far online and at community events has been positive. The project has allowed for a significant diversion of waste, as well as provided a platform for folks to obtain usable secondhand goods without cost. The Share Shed has also helped to reduce some crowding in existing reuse facilities and increase services for a broader population. With Council's direction, the Share Shed will continue operating with ongoing dialogue between staff and the transfer station operator to continue developing program efficiency and monitoring the facility and service use to address any needs as they arise.
Thanks, Heather. Are there any questions for Ms. Shepherd? Please.
I think the success of, or in a large part of the Share Shed has been the landfill operator who does beyond marvelous job in ensuring that what should be going in there is going in there and what shouldn't be going in there is not going in there. So I think a huge part of this success goes and has to be credited to her. So just wanted to make that comment.
Thank you. Anybody else? So I had one question. This was a trial project. It come back from staff as a recommendation to continue this implementation. So does it, if this is approved tonight, does it become operational and then we don't need to look at it again? It's an operational, it's an operational requirement of the municipality ongoing into the future?
That would be the intent unless council has different wishes.
Okay.
So it would come back each year to the budget, like through the budget process as all the other.
It would, so we would typically roll it into our operational plan, so it would actually be part of our operational budget unless council wanted to have it separated out to review it annually otherwise, right? So it's under normal circumstances, we would just roll it into our operational budget as that process. So it's up to council.
So if it gets rolled into the operational process, then would we still get an annual report on the diversion that has taken place, or does it just then keep a rolling?
We can provide whatever information council wishes. So what we do report annually on our diversion anyways, based on our, because we're required to report annually on our solid waste management plan. So council, which is every, I think, June 30th, I think is when the date is for that report to be
So
submitted.
it would just become a section in that report.
Basically,
Share
as part of our, because we supporting our diversion initiatives essentially.
Yeah, I would like, if we could, I would like to see the diversion listed separately, not just as an overall number, but to ensure that that $15,000 is actually being utilized to the best advantage, that there is actually meaningful diversion happening through it.
Sure.
Do we have a resolution on the floor? Or are we still just asking questions? I think we're still just asking questions. There's no resolution on the floor yet. So staff has a recommendation there. What are council's wishes?
I'd like to
Okay.
I'd like to recommend that council approve the ongoing operation of the Northern Rockies Share Shed.
Moved by Council Andrews, second by Councilor Roper. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That carries. That takes us to admin report 0623, the BC Rural Health Network. We had a bit of a discussion at the last meeting. Staff has a report there. They've brought forward. Is there anybody who staff wants to speak to this, or are we?
The council, Hillary's there if you have any
Okay.
questions.
Yeah, I can just present the report if you'd like. Of course, you did have the presentation from the BC Rural Health Network on January 9th. Over the past year, they've been making significant gains in terms of purpose, scope, governance, and gaining traction and being able to secure high-level meetings with government and senior health system leaders. Recognizing the NRM's priority of achieving equitable access to healthcare aligns with the goals of the network, and therefore membership is recommended as another step towards working together to strategize solutions and overcome healthcare challenges faced by rural communities. All of the network's current 23 municipal members right now hold regular membership, which allows members to make motions, vote, and/or hold office as directors, receive minutes of all meetings, and receive written financial statements. Additionally, through correspondence with the network, there is an Indigenous engagement policy in development, and the network is also actively working to engage and collaborate with Indigenous communities and stakeholders. Currently, there's membership from Nau-Channel Tribal Council Nursing Services, and they work with various First Nations on the Rural Citizens Perspectives Table and a more senior policy table as well. So the recommendation in the report is for council to purchase an annual membership.
Council's wishes? Councilor Gurmey?
Yeah, I think that this would be a valuable network to join. I would like to add that I think it's imperative that we do more than just adding our name to the letterhead, that we become involved in the organization. I know at the presentation, they said that we can be as involved as we want. So I think having somebody on the board if that's appropriate. I think we should do that. And there also in the report mentions perhaps dedicating some staff time to it as well. So I'd like to have a discussion about how council feels about that.
I also thought about that, wondering, I was thinking specifically about the implementation committee that they talked about, whether that would be, is that made up mainly of staff people or is it made up of elected people? Like who's the appropriate person to, from our organization to potentially to join and participate in this? And I think we said there's just 2 on the implementation committee from elected officials. Is that on the board? Right, and the rest are staff members from one organization or another?
Yes, or they're board members of a not-for-profit that deals in the health sector. So just a basic search of their board membership was kind of a range of people, but there were really only 2 elected officials from small communities.
Right.
A representative on the board itself. But Mr. Adams did talk about the various committees that they have forming, and that's another way to get involved actively.
So you said that our contractor sits on this, or is a member of this board as well,
So he's a member of the network.
network?
But he's also volunteered as a participant in their implementation committee. They're gearing up to do a patient transport, have a look at patient transport, the cost of patient travel for planned medical visits, essentially, which resonates.
Right.
So our health services consultant, in his own consulting role, volunteered to be involved.
Okay, what are council's wishes?
Yeah, so I could go with the recommendation, but I would like to add on that I think that there needs to be council's representation. We can determine what that would look like. And if appropriate, staff time be dedicated to the involvement in the network.
So fire away at what you think a resolution would say.
Okay, well, that and
Because
That the
that's
Northern-
not near specific enough, I don't think.
that the Northern Rockies Regional Municipality apply to become a regular member of the BC Rural Health Network at an annual cost of $50, and that council appoint a representative to get involved in the network. And that staff time be committed to
That's just.
assist. Thanks.
You're welcome. Moved by Counselor Gerwing. Did staff get that? Okay, second by Counselor Souls. Discussion. Counselor Souls.
Are you willing to be involved?
I'm also open if somebody else wants to do it though. Like, don't get me wrong.
I hear the railroad. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Would somebody like to make an appointment resolution? Counselor Souls,
I make a resolution that we appoint Councillor Gerwing to be the lead on this.
moved by Counselor Souls, second by Counselor Andrews. Any discussion?
I accept.
All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. I also wanted to say that my email has been inundated lately with a request from a mayor's group calling themselves the Healthcare Alliance, which was a group of mayors that started out at UBCM sitting down, having a meal together and talking about questions that they might ask the minister at UBCM at his session that was there. And they came up with 17 questions that kind of boiled down to about 8. But we think that the minister got wind of it and a couple of people hogged the mic and there was no opportunity to get up there and ask the questions. But apparently this latest health announcement, I guess, from some of the things that I haven't read it yet. And so that's why I really can't comment. But from talking to one of the mayors that was on that, some of the things that's in this change were directly related to some of the questions that were, because we still submitted the questions, we just didn't get a chance to ask them in public, that's all. So it appears that that group is making a little bit of headway. I'd like to see exactly what it was, but but they're looking to revive that after the election now and move that forward. And I think maybe I will put my name in and we'll see how this goes. But there seems to be a groundswell of support around the entire province, particularly from the rural communities, smaller rural communities. However, there were a couple of large communities that were represented there as well. So we'll see where that goes, just to bring you up to speed from an information perspective. Okay. I think that's it for, oh no, the Andy Bailey report is 9.6. So I think we're looking for a recommendation to approve the grant app or support the grant application moving forward. Just trying to remember what we called that. The Andy Bailey Active Mobility Study Implementation and the application for the grant. So we're looking for approval for that. Moved by Councillor Gerwing, second by Councillor Enex. Bill Barry?
Accessibility Park Improvement Project might be specific.
More
the way
specific?
the resolution. Thank you.
Okay. Did you catch all of that? Accessibility
Park Improvement Project.
Park Improvement Project.
Looking for support of council for that project.
Okay. So we have a motion on the floor for support of that. Is there any further discussion? I think there's lots of opportunity for us to sort of look at the finer details once this comes through, but this will give the staff that opportunity to create that more robust application, I guess.
And
Councillor Hammond.
just to confirm, we are voting on putting in the grant application.
Correct.
Perfect.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you for that. That brings us to correspondence. I have 3 points. There's a new point on there, 10.3 Villers Air, but we will accept the council information packages of which you've all received. So we'll accept those together, receive them for information. Moved by Councillor Gerwing, second by Councillor Roper, that the council information package from January 11th and January 18th be received for information. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. 10.3 is an addition to the agenda, which is an email from Mr. Campbell at Villers Air Service with respect to his contract with Air Medevac, Emergency Air Medevac, say that 10 times in a row, service in BC with Emergency Health Services. So it's on the floor for discussion. I know some of you had some comments on the email that you thought it was important that we talk about it tonight. So I'll open it up to the floor for any discussion.
Okay,
Councillor Gerwing.
thank you. So I'm trying to be politically correct, so I'm not surprised.
That's not like you.
I know it's not like but we're being recorded. I'm not surprised that we're back here talking about this again. I think Dan has done absolutely everything that he can do and above and beyond. We all thought we were making progress, and he asked us to step back from our advocacy efforts to get this project off and running. He wanted to provide, and I won't speak for him because he's here, so he can speak for himself, but he wanted to provide BC Emergency Services with a grace period to get this service up and running. And I think we all agree that there's been enough of a grace period, and he has not received one call. And it's, again, we're playing whack-a-mole. We thought we Stan thought he had it all covered and, you know, now it's like do this or do that. But I think it's now everything is set in place and he's nodding, so there should be no reason why he isn't getting any calls. Except for, I know I had a conversation with the manager of clinical operations for the Northeast District for BC Emergency Health Services, and he mentioned something that it could be the fact that they don't want to release paramedics from our community to take a patient to another community. So back to my comment about now we're playing whack-a-mole here. It's another roadblock that's being put into place. So, like, I believe that we need to apply the pressure again. I don't have all the answers as to how we could go about doing that. I would suggest that we start by contacting our local unit chief and also Jonathan, I don't know how to say his last name, but it's BRNJAS, who's the manager of clinical operations for the Northeast District. He's the gentleman that I spoke to, and then go up the chain for BC Emergency Services to get some answers as to why this service is not being utilized locally.
So you spoke that this has been, you've been through this before. So is that the route you took? Did it went local, talk to this fellow, and then took it up the line? Was that the approach last time?
Well, we went all the way up to, I don't know how high we went. We went right up to the top of BC Emergency Health Services. I don't even know who that is now. Do you remember, Scott or Jaylene?
We spoke to Paul, at one point, Paul Vallely, which is, he's really far up. And part of the Patient Transfer Network program. So it's, I think that might be a reasonable start. I mean, we can have the conversations locally, but at times to the local, to give them an idea where some of the concerns are, I think, but they don't make the call when it
No.
comes to the transfer network piece. They're just called to say, bring patient here in many cases. So, you know, for us to try to understand what's going on, it'd probably be good to reach out to some of the contacts we have within the system to ask some questions, which is a little bit higher up than just the local, but I think it would be appropriate to have those communications at that
Yeah.
level, but the questions would be most likely asked and answered at a higher level.
Yeah, I didn't mean to suggest that, you know, start and wait for an answer from the unit chief and then go up the next step. I think we should be doing this all at the same time. And I believe that there has been staff turnover again in BC Emergency Health Services. I also think that we need to include our MLA in it. I think, you know, just everybody working together to try to get some movement.
Counselor Souls.
Given that we just very, very recently communicated with this department in government regarding a disastrous story that we had, that it would have been addressed by this as a solution, I think we should be writing a letter right to the top right away and then working on the angles, working our way up through proper protocol. And of course, now that we can be members of the BC Rural Health Group, there's some work for you to do in that, and a mayor's gathering of people that are also concerned about the regional health system and emergency services. I think there's work to do, but I think right off the bat, let's not let that last letter get cold.
So if I may, are you speaking about sending a letter to the Ministry of Health like we did on behalf of the resident that had such a disastrous transfer?
Yes, because the reason that I'm making the linkage is that this is a solution to that one. Had this been looked at earlier, that one would not have happened the way it happened. Because it was recent enough. Dan was ready for this a while back, quite a while back.
Well, I think we identified a possibility of not having enough paramedics to allow for them to be removed from our community. A long time we identified that. And so if that hasn't been addressed, then that should be something that they be held accountable for.
I know I waited 2 days. I'm sure that plane was sitting on the tarmac when I was in the hospital. So, yeah, there's opportunities here. Here for sure. So, am I hearing a resolution to send a letter to, the Ministry of Health along with the BC Emergency Health Services, asking the questions with respect to why this service is not being utilized and citing specifically, the case where the patient, was transferred, by land for an appendicitis attack.
Yes, that is the recommendation.
Okay,
I'd like
moved
to
by
make.
Counselor Solls.
Do you want to CC that to somebody? Sorry.
We can talk about that in discussion. Seconded, please. Second by Counselor Enoch. Discussion.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Do you want to add a CC, Counselor Souls, or
Yes,
to everybody?
to the ones that would be relevant to that discussion, yes.
So we're talking the minister, we're talking the senior executive of BC Emergency Health Service, the local unit chief, this fellow that you have
Jonathan, the
this
manager,
card
yeah,
for. And that should get the ball rolling.
our MLA.
Sorry, thank you, our MLA.
And does Dan want to be CC'd on it or just out of it? Okay, and Villar's there. I'll second that.
Thank you. I think you did already. Yeah. Is there any further discussion?
Yeah.
Yep.
And I mean, any other advocacy efforts that anybody can think of? I don't know if Dan has any more
Like
ideas.
flying Counselor Goering to Victoria?
No, I'm not flying until the airlines work out their problems. That's, yeah, okay. And I mean, maybe Dan Davies' office might have some advocacy ideas. So I'd just like to, I don't know how we can do that. Like, can we have something open on the table, or does it have to come back to council to approve any advocacies? Or can I just make a motion that says that council approves advocacy work to be done on ensuring that builders, you're not typing, Jaylene. I
No,
won't be able
because
to repeat.
because we already have a motion on the
Oh,
floor.
okay,
That's why
sorry.
she's not typing, I suspect. Yeah, that motion would be appropriate, I think, once we're finished with this one. So, corporate officer, or manager, I'm sorry, could you just repeat back to us what we're voting on as best you can?
To write a letter to the Ministry of Health and BC Emergency Health Services citing the recent example, being the patient that was transferred for appendicitis, and this being and fillers air being a viable solution, not being utilized. There's amendment to carbon copy the Senior Vice President of BC Emergency Health Services, the local unit chief. I can't remember his title, the Northeast Chief Operating Officer or something. Jonathan, yeah.
So I think that was just part of the discussion, wasn't an amendment?
Oh, that wasn't an
Yeah,
amended
it's
motion.
just, it was,
Okay.
yeah, it's just part of the discussion about who the letter will get CC.
Okay, perfect.
And that was moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. So a motion would be in order to authorize staff to spend some time on this advocacy effort.
Okay,
Moved by Counselor Gerwing that staff be authorized to spend some time, staff time with respect to this advocacy effort. Do I have a seconder? Second by Counselor Enoch. Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. We'll leave that up to staff to determine how much and how it fits into the schedules. And who. Thank you. We are at 11.1, additions by mayor. I have none. 11.2 is a request from Northern Lights College, Fort Nelson campus for a letter of support for automotive service technician. That is page 49, page 50. Yep, go ahead.
I didn't get that letter in my public, no. Oh,
Oh, there was no letter? Yes, please.
So it came by email. I think it might have resulted from Lori's still here. I just can't see her. It came out of this community roundtable, correct? Yeah. So we received a sample letter of support from School District 81. in support of this program. And when I followed up with Northern Lights College directly, the gentleman, the campus administrator, advised that he is gathering various letters of support from the community that he would like to collate and submit to the board of directors for Northern Lights College to potentially offer the automotive service technician level 1 training here in Fort Nelson. So we didn't, other than the school district's sample letter, which was very specific from their point of view, I didn't feel it relevant to include it on the agenda, but that's the gist of the request essentially. So we would have to write our own letter of support. But I think there's some obvious benefits to having localized training like that. We don't typically see that in the community. So.
Questions, comments? What would you like to do? Okay, who's going to make that resolution?
I'd like to make a motion that staff drop a letter of support for an automotive service technician level 1 training at our local Northern Lights College.
Moved by Councillor Andrews, second by Councillor Roper. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That's carried. 11.3 and 11.4 are recreation statistics. Is there any questions about this, or can we receive it for information? Seeing no questions, we can receive it for information. Moved by Councillor Roper, second by Councillor Andrews, that we receive these 2 reports for information. Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That's carried. What are we doing for time? 7:46. Councillor reports. Councillor Andrews.
On the 17th, I attended the Northern Rockies stakeholders meeting with Darius Lowe. He's the district manager for Fort Nelson Natural Resource District. We touched on many subjects. There was a new sheep summit ran in BC, and Region 7B, our region, was specifically targeted for sheep counts and monitoring. There was some updates on Nunda Creek Road. Some of the next steps, they're collecting recommendations for stream management to preserve wildlife and fish habitats. I'm still waiting on a proposal to be made to obtain funding to execute that plan. We had Sonia give us a report on an overview of the changed process to prescribed fires, and a bunch of slides on that are available for anybody who's interested. We had a presentation on the Casca IPCA Kachika Management Plan. It was really in depth, and there's actually a video link if anyone's interested to go over that. And then a couple other things about bison concerns and Skooks Landing. If anyone wants some updates on those, just let me know.
If you could send that, that link out.
Yeah, well, I'll email this all out to council.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything particular that they said about Nunda Creek? We were at a public process, right? That we were gonna help with the public process to
Yeah.
get some feedback.
They're still waiting on the Northern Rockies public engagement to be completed and have that go through. And they'll continue assessing the road for environmental risks. There needed to be some terrain stability assessments done on the road. Yeah, depending on whatever's gonna be done with it.
Yeah.
Oh, and another one of note, thank you. It was any comments, questions, concerns, ideas on what you want the road to be. Darius, my apologies, is looking for comments directly to him, and I have his email. I'll have in the email council as well.
Thanks, Councilor Andrews. The staff. I sat through the presentation at Chode, and I got the impression that they were going to lead an engagement session that we were gonna assist with. Is that not correct, or are we taking the lead with this now?
It's a bit of a chicken and the egg syndrome. It's
Oh.
like pushing a rope uphill sometimes. Myself and Lisa have had extensive discussion about this and some of the back and forth we've had with the province. We're in the process of putting together a survey that's going to go out. We continue to communicate who should be taking the lead on it, but yeah, we're working through it. I'll say that.
Okay. Okay, I mean, that road is in, lots of people have opinions about that road and the bridge and everything that goes with it. And, you know, this municipality took over that bridge, so it's a bridge to somewhere, right? So that road, I think, is important to the future economic development, tourism of the region, whatever it ends up looking like. So I think it's important if the province is not moving forward, then we either prod them hard or we do what we can to move the project.
Yeah, we just had some communication, probably 2.5 weeks ago, I guess, with Darius around some next steps specific to the engagement piece. And he also provided a bit of an update, which we haven't had an opportunity to bring back to council yet.
Good.
but
It sounds like we're on that.
Yeah.
Okay. Are there any other? Councillor Souls.
Yeah, I will report on my involvement or travel to the Natural Resource Farm in Prince George. There's 4 points that I'd like to make that I observed that were very obvious in that. First one is that there's obviously lots of capital flowing toward mega projects in the north. There's a lot of capital that has been flowing to Site C and as well to the Coastal Gas Link. And one of the things that is resulting in overall is that it's noticeable to everyone else that there's a labor deficiency of labor. And so there's all sorts of things that are I haven't talked to a business person anywhere that doesn't recognize that there's nobody to hire. And so the money that's flowing, the large capital projects are getting the focus of that, and the wages that go with it are actually siphoning people out of everything else. So that's not abnormal. That's what happens. The only thing the observation I make regarding that is that it looks very much like while we were there was the announcement of the twinning of the hydro line, the BC hydro line that will go from the dams to the coast all the way. Therefore, there's another mega project coming on the heels of these ones. And with that, there was a comment made by the premier who mentioned there was at least 3 mega mines that wanted to tap into that power source once it's there. Therefore, there's more large scale capital focused projects that are coming down the line. So this labor pool issue is not going to go away in the near future. The second thing, or the other thing regarding the forest industry in this, forest industry didn't get very much light there, much discussion at all. It was except to acknowledge that it's in decline. And I actually noticed that when the premier spoke, it almost sounded like it was kind of handy to be speaking and having a few hundred jobs left vacant in Prince George, because they could certainly tap into the labor market in the mega projects. And just the reason I mentioned the forest industry and its lack of representation there on a direct level is that I think it'll be very challenging for any community that's trying to establish a new forest industry presence to find the capital to do so. So anyway, just an observation. Hopefully I'm wrong. But some of the really good news that came out of the gathering there is the signing of the revenue sharing agreements with some of the Treaty 8 First Nations, including Fort Nelson First Nation. That's awesome news. That is the new way forward to actually find solutions for these other problems that we have, lack of labor or lack of industry or whatever. I believe that in our North Country, clarity will come because of these decisions that are made. It's really good. I also just in the last final point is that I think that we're going to, for a while, see some real volatility in our industry bases in the north, particularly forest industry.
Thank you. Are there any others? Councillor Going?
So January 17th, I attended the Northern Medical Trust meeting via Zoom. The meeting consisted of reports from the Northern Medical Program outlining what the trust actually is, physiotherapy and occupational therapy update, nursing and family nurse practitioner update, and a video highlighting some of the pathway students that is supported by the trust, and then a few bylaw amendments. If you want any further details about what the trust or what it does, I can send you the outline of the presentation. January 19th, I attended the chamber lunch where our staff gave a presentation on the business bylaw update and the downtown downtown revitalization project. And on the 22nd, I attended the Lamplighters Board meeting. They are investigating opportunities to offer the Better at Home program for seniors. This program works to provide support to seniors that would allow aging in place, and funding comes from the United Way of Northern BC. Like many other not-for-profits in our community, they are hurting for funds. So I think we can expect a visit from the Lamplighters upcoming. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, my turn, I suppose. Thank goodness Counselor Souls and I were at the same resource forum, because we obviously took it the same way. So I was also somewhat disappointed with respect to the representation of the forest industry. Usually you see this at least 2, maybe 3 CEOs on a panel talking about what's going on in their industry, and they weren't there. There was a big emphasis on mining with respect to receiving Indigenous support and setting relationships before these big mine operations and or mega projects go into a territory. There was an awful lot. I don't think there was a panel representative that didn't say creating relationships is in advance of trying to deal with the specifics of a project is extremely important. Obviously, equity ownership is becoming a very big issue. I made several contacts, and in that vein, Sandra Suter was sitting next to me when they were talking about employment and the opportunity that the nations across the country have. They are the fastest growing demographic in the country, and so too is their opportunity for their workforce engagement. And she pointed me to the National Indigenous Economic Strategy, which I'm going to put my hands on and have a read of, because it sounds like that's they did an awful lot of work to sort of identify how, you know, the general economic opportunities and strategies that the First Nations have can really help with the entire economy, not just their own. So that was a great opportunity for to meet with her. I also had an opportunity to meet Mike Robertson, who's doing a really big project with the Cheslata Carrier Nation with respect to archaeological surveys that they're doing around that on that lake. When they flooded that valley in order to put water to Alcan, there was many villages that got covered. And this last fire season, although tragic for everybody, opened up an opportunity because it burnt all the vegetation away from some of those villages, and they could see where they were. So, you know, if there's ever an opportunity for us to get into some type of a project where we're looking at that, he'd be a great person to get, you know, to pull into that. The future of the workforce, we've kind of already talked about that. There was a fireside chat, they called it, with 2 LNG CEOs that are really trying to get their projects up and moving. They see that LNG is the future, that we won't just end up with one LNG plant, that we'll see more LNG plants. And I sat with Martin LaFrance, who is a representative of Woodside Energy, and I'll talk to you about what he said in the closed meeting. The resource breakfast with all the ministers was pretty good. You know, there was a lot of pretty good conversation, but it was so general in nature, it really didn't give me much. Mining and Indigenous communities, again, they talked about creating those relationships and creating training opportunities for the nations to ensure that they have employment, which brings the economy back to their communities. There was some panel on innovation in BC's natural gas industry. Mostly the innovation is around detecting carbon so that they can actually start to reduce the carbon that they had. There was one one bit of technology they talked about where from a plane, detection technology, from a plane flying over your house, they can determine whether or not your propane bottle is on and your barbecue is turned on but not lit from a plane. So that they can identify hydrocarbons fairly quickly. So they can fly over large, vast areas of these plants and determine where some of the fugitive emissions might be coming from. The ability to detect, which then gives the ability to reduce those fugitive emissions. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And then we talked about hydrogen now and into the future and what that looks like. Of course, we're along that curve a little bit with respect to the hydrogen technology, but it was interesting to note that there is a company in the Lower Mainland, Hydra Energy Corp, and they are donating. Well, that's not a donation. It's a contract with trucking companies to give them hydrogen-based engines for their transport trucks, provided that they sign up a 5-year contract to buy hydrogen from them. And of course, they're trying to improve the technology. The tanks that they put on these trucks they can go 1,000 kilometers. So and of course, they're also trying to develop the market, right? Because everybody says that the offtake of hydrogen right now is one of the barriers. Is that there's just not enough offtake to really, they've kind of got the hydrogen thing figured out, but there's just not enough offtake there. So that was pretty good. The other thing that disappointed me a little bit is that they usually have an economist there, a significant economist that's nationally renowned, and maybe he'll be at Kofi this year, but he is normally at this conference where he talks about what's happening in our economy now. This year, he projects out to the next couple of years, and he's been surprisingly accurate over the last few years. I didn't go to the last two because they were online, but generally I like watching for Jock Finlayson at these all the time. I met Chris Norbury, he's a counselor in Tumbler Ridge, who's responsible for their community forest, a good contact. Ken Ewan, who is the senior manager of investors at the Ministry of Jobs, Economic Recovery and Innovation. I think he'll be a good guy for us to connect with, and really, we sort of lost our connections to the Ministry of Jobs in that last shakeup. This guy seems like he's very approachable. So I'm interested in that. Daniel Bornstein did a presentation on impact benefit agreements, which I think you could take the word, which are mostly based for Indigenous communities, but I think you can take the word impact benefit agreement off of that and put community benefit agreement in there. And I think the principles of how they apply would fit to local government. And then finally, I met the mayor of Prince George, Simon Yu, and he's a firecracker. Yeah, he's just like a Wolverine. He's just spinning all the time. He's you remember on that cartoon Bugs Bunny, that little Tasmanian devil? Yeah, he just reminds you just of that. He's a very active fellow. So that was the as I said, I wasn't entirely happy. I've been to these when they've been better, but it was useful to go and make old contacts new and to see some of these new contacts. I could not get a word in edgewise at the BCR, or sorry, at the CN Rail booth. It was surrounded the whole time. Yeah, there was a lot of people wanted to talk to CN down there for one reason or another. Friday, I was at the Northeast Regional Advisory Committee, RAC, for the NDIT. I am the new chair, and I'm the new representative to the board in Prince George. So I'm looking forward to working on that and bringing home opportunities for grants and that sort of thing, because I'll be much more aware, being in those positions, of what's available and what we might be able to tap into. So I think that will be good for us as well. And I think that's it. As I said, I've got a little bit to talk to you in a closed meeting about what Chief said and a little bit about what Woodside said. So that was my couple of weeks. It was a good one. Anybody else? No? Okay. Is there anything for strategic priorities? I guess this week, the 28th, from 9 till 1, we've got a strategic session.
Yes, that's correct. And I sent an email out for those, just a reminder regarding the pre-session questionnaire. We'll send it up to Christina, facilitator.
Yeah. Yours is done? Good, yeah. Then, and the number of ideas we had on the questionnaire earlier today, I think hopefully we'll have some real good ones for the strategic plan as well. Okay, public news media. Are there any questions from the gallery about anything we talked about tonight? Okay, seeing none, a resolution to move to a closed meeting, please. Moved by Counselor Gerwig, second by Counselor Souls. Any discussion about that? We're moving in camera to talk about information that would be presented in the document would be prohibited from disclosure and the Freedom of Information Protection and Privacy Act. That's why we're going in camera. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, we'll recess for a couple minutes while we clear the room, and thank you very much. Yeah. Okay, so let's call the regular meeting of council back to order. Could I have the corporate manager rise with a report?
Yes, moved by Counselor Andrews, seconded by Counselor Roper to release the Regional Health Advocacy Priority Actions and Work Plan publicly as a draft document, carried unanimously.
Thank you for that. Adjournment of the regular meeting is in order. I'll take resolution moved by Counselor Andrews, second by Counselor Enex, that we adjourn the regular meeting. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you, everybody, and have a nice night.